The conference hall on Kalari Station was the largest room Jake Morrison had ever seen. Crystal pillars stretched up to a ceiling so high it seemed to disappear into darkness. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species filled the massive space, all gathered for one reason. The Zalthine Empire was finally willing to talk peace with humanity. Jake stood at his post near the human delegation, his rifle held at ease across his chest. He had been a Marine for 6 years, but nothing in his training prepared him for this. The other species kept their distance from the human section, whispering among themselves. Jake caught enough of the translated words to understand. They thought humans were crazy. Only humans had refused to retreat when the Zalthine fleet arrived in their space 3 years ago. Lieutenant Amy Cross walked past him, yet checking each guard position. She stopped beside Jake and spoke quietly. "Stay alert, Morrison. This is the biggest diplomatic event in human history. Nothing can go wrong." "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. Ambassador Henry Walsh was sweating despite the cool air. He kept reviewing his notes, rehearsing his greeting in the Zaltine language. Jake felt almost sorry for the man. The weight of representing all of humanity rested on his shoulders. A deep sound filled the hall, like a bell being struck in the depths of space itself. Every conversation stopped. The crowd parted, creating a wide path down the center of the room. They came through the main entrance with a presence that made Jake's breath catch. Zalthine guards stood nearly 8 feet tall, their skin shifting between blue and silver. But they wore armor that seemed to be made of liquid metal, constantly flowing and reforming. Their weapons hummed with barely contained energy. But none of that compared to the Empress herself. Talia Vormesh was smaller than her guards, perhaps 7 feet tall. She moved with a grace that seemed to defy gravity. Her robes flowed around her like they were alive. Her skin was a deep blue that reminded Jake of the ocean at twilight. Her eyes were silver, completely silver, with no visible pupil. Those eyes swept across the room, and when they passed over the human section, Jake felt like he was being measured and judged in a single instant. The Empress walked to the center platform where Ambassador Walsh waited. The human looked tiny next to her, but to his credit, he stood straight and spoke clearly. "Empress Talia Vormesh, on behalf of humanity, we welcome you to this gathering of peace." The Empress regarded him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried through the hall without effort. "Ambassador Walsh, your species has proven difficult to ignore. We are here to understand why humans refuse to acknowledge their proper place." It was not the friendliest opening, but Walsh had expected it. He began his prepared response, speaking about mutual respect and cooperation. Jake stopped listening to the words and focused on his job. He scanned the crowd, looking for anything out of place. The other guards seemed relaxed. The Zaltine had brought their own security. The station's systems were supposedly locked down tight, but something felt wrong to Jake. He could not explain it, just a feeling in his gut that whispered warnings. His eyes caught movement in the upper galleries, shadows where there should not be shadows. The explosion came from 3 directions at once. The crystal pillars shattered. The floor erupted upward in chunks of metal and stone. Screaming filled the air as aliens of every species scrambled for the exits. Energy weapons fired from the galleries, cutting down Zalthine guards who moved to protect their Empress. Jake saw forms descending on repelling lines. They wore black armor that absorbed light. Krell. He recognized them from intelligence briefings. Mercenaries and assassins, the best money could buy. Lieutenant Cross was shouting orders, but Jake could barely hear her over the chaos. The human guards were falling back to defensive positions, creating a protective barrier around Ambassador Walsh. It was the right call. Protect the diplomat. Get him to safety. But Jake was not looking at the ambassador. His eyes were locked on the Empress. Her guards had surrounded her, their shields creating a shimmering barrier. But Jake saw what they had not. One of the initial explosions had damaged the shield generator at the Empress's side. The device sparked and smoked. The shield was failing. A Krell strike team hit the Zalthine formation from above. They had weapons specifically designed to penetrate Zalthine shields. The guards fell one after another. The Empress stood motionless, watching her protectors die with those silver eyes, showing no fear. The shield generator failed completely with a sound like breaking glass. The Empress was exposed. 6 Krell assassins locked their weapons on her. At this range, they could not miss. Jake did not think. Thinking took too long. His body moved before his mind caught up. He sprinted forward, leaving his position, ignoring Lieutenant Cross shouting his name. His boots pounded against the broken floor. Everyone else was running away. Jake ran toward. The Krell fired. Plasma bolts screamed through the air, bright enough to burn after-images into his vision. Jake threw himself in front of the Empress, his armor taking the hits meant for her. The impacts felt like being kicked by a horse. Once, twice, 3 times. His armor held, but barely. He brought his rifle up and fired. The first Krell went down with a smoking hole in its chest. The second fell as Jake's shots punched through its faceplate. The other 4 scattered, looking for cover. Jake's rifle died in his hands, the power cell overloaded from absorbing plasma splash. He dropped it and drew his combat knife. It was a simple blade, nothing fancy. Against Krell assassins with advanced weapons and armor, it was almost laughable. But Jake did not laugh. He set his feet and raised the knife. Behind him, the Empress spoke for the first time since the attack began. Her voice was quiet, almost wondering. "You are standing between me and death." "Yes, ma'am," Jake said, not taking his eyes off the approaching Krell. "Your companions have abandoned their positions. You have abandoned yours. To protect me." "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" The Krell raised their weapons. Jake adjusted his grip on the knife. "Because it is the right thing to do, ma'am." The Empress said nothing else. Jake could feel her eyes on his back as the assassins opened fire. Jake woke to softness. Everything around him felt gentle and warm, seeing nothing like the hard bunks on the military transport he called home. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The ceiling above him moved. No, that was wrong. It flowed like water, colors shifting from blue to purple to silver. Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his chest and shoulder. "Do not move yet, human." The voice came from his left. A Zolthine stood beside what Jake assumed was a medical bed. This one wore robes of deep green and carried instruments that hummed softly. "Your body is still repairing itself." "Where am I?" Jake's voice came out rough. "The medical bay of the Eternal Dawn, flagship of the Empress's personal fleet." Jake's memory came flooding back. The attack. The Krell assassins. He putting himself between their weapons and the Empress. After that, everything went dark. "How long have I been out?" "3 of your days." 3 days. Jake closed his eyes and took a careful breath. "The Empress. Is she safe?" "She is unharmed, thanks to your actions." The Zolthine doctor made a gesture Jake could not read. "Your reinforcements arrived shortly after you fell. The assassins were eliminated." The door to the medical bay opened with a sound like wind chimes. Lieutenant Cross walked in, and the relief on her face was obvious. "Morrison, you crazy idiot." She pulled up a chair beside his bed. "Do you have any idea what you did?" "Protected the Empress, ma'am?" "You violated your position. You abandoned the ambassador's security detail. You directly disobeyed standing orders." Cross leaned forward. "Masha, and you saved the most powerful being in this sector of space." Jake waited. There was more coming. "The Empress has invoked something called the Debt of Honor. Do you know what that is?" "No, ma'am." Cross glanced at the Zolthine doctor, who had moved to the far side of the room but was clearly listening. She lowered her voice anyway. "It is an ancient Zolthine law. When someone saves the life of another by risking their own, without thought of reward or obligation, a debt is created. The saved person owes the saver everything until the debt is paid." "So the Empress owes me?" Jake felt uncomfortable with that idea. "No, Morrison. You owe her. In Zolthine culture, you became her sworn protector the moment you put yourself between her and those weapons. Until she releases you, or you die protecting her, you belong to her." Jake stared at the flowing ceiling. "I do not understand." "Neither does anyone else." The last time this happened was 300 years ago, and it nearly started a civil war among the Zaltine houses. Cross rubbed her face. Ambassador Walsh is trying to figure out the diplomatic implications. General Command does not know what to do with you, and the Empress has demanded you be brought before her as soon as you can stand. The Zaltine doctor spoke from across the room. He can stand now. The human body is remarkably resilient. We have accelerated his healing with our technology. Cross helped Jake to his feet. His uniform had been replaced with simple gray clothing that felt like silk but moved like cotton. He felt strange, lighter somehow, and his wounds did not hurt as much as they should. What did they do to me? Healed you better than any human doctor could. Cross steadied him as he took his first steps. Try not to think about it too much. We are way out of our depth here. They walked through corridors that seemed grown rather than built. Other Zaltine passed them, each one stopping to stare at Jake with those silver eyes. Some looked curious. Others looked hostile. They entered a vast chamber that must have been the bridge. Displays showed star charts and ship formations. Crew members worked at stations that looked more like musical instruments than control panels. At the center of it all stood the Empress. She turned as Jake entered, and everyone else in the room went silent. Jake tried to stand straight despite his healing injuries. He might not understand Zaltine protocol, but he knew how to show respect. Saw Corporal Jake Morrison. The Empress moved toward him with that impossible grace. You are recovered. Yes, Your Majesty. Do you know what you have done? I protected you, Your Majesty. You did more than that. She stopped a few feet away, studying him like he was a puzzle she could not solve. You acted without thought of survival, without calculation of benefit. You simply moved to place yourself between danger and another being. This is not how Zaltine think. This is not how most species think. Jake did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing. A massive Zaltine in military armor stepped forward. His presence radiated authority and barely contained anger. High Commander Vekral objects to this situation, Lieutenant Cross whispered to Jake. The commander spoke, his voice deep as thunder. This human cannot serve as your sworn protector, Empress. He is weak, untrained in our ways. His presence dishonors the ancient tradition. He was strong enough to do what your guards did not, the Empress replied calmly. He stood when others fell or fled. He is human. Vekral's composure cracked slightly. A species barely capable of space travel. To place him in a position of such trust is madness. And yet he earned that trust with actions, not words. The Empress turned back to Jake. The debt of honor stands. You will remain at my side until it is fulfilled or you fall. Do you accept this? Jake glanced at Lieutenant Cross, who looked helpless. He thought about refusing, but something in the Empress's silver eyes made him reconsider. This meant something to her. Something important. I accept. Your Majesty. Good. The Empress seemed satisfied. I have decided to continue the peace summit, but on your world. I wish to understand humanity better. You will accompany me as both protector and guide. High Commander Vekral made a sound like grinding stones but said nothing. Another Zaltine stepped forward, smaller than the others, with robes of soft gold. I am Shivara, cultural attaché. I will help you learn our ways, human Jake Morrison. The Empress moved to the main display, which showed Earth in the distance. Intelligence reports indicate the assassination attempt was merely the beginning. The Krell Syndicate does not abandon contracts. They will try again. Then we will be ready, Jake said. The Empress looked at him with something that might have been approval. Yes, we will. As the great ship turned toward Earth, Jake stood beside the Empress and wondered what he had gotten himself into. 3 days ago, he was a simple Marine. Now he was sworn protector to the most powerful being in known space. Lieutenant Cross stood beside him and whispered, Welcome to galactic politics, Morrison. Jake watched Earth grow larger on the display and said nothing. Words seemed inadequate. The arrival of the Zaltine flagship over Earth was the most watched event in human history. Every screen on the planet showed the massive vessel descending through the atmosphere, its hull shimmering with colors that had no names in human language. News reporters spoke in hushed, excited voices about what this meant for humanity's future. Jake stood in the landing bay wearing a formal marine dress uniform, feeling out of place. Now, the Empress had insisted he wear human military attire rather than Zolthine clothing. She wanted him to represent his people, she said. Beside him stood Lieutenant Cross and a dozen other Marines, all looking nervous. The Empress descended the ramp with High Commander Vekral and her entourage following. Jake fell into step beside her, as they had practiced. It still felt strange walking next to someone so powerful. The Empress noticed his discomfort. "You are tense, Jake Morrison." "Yes, Your Majesty. My people are watching. I do not want to embarrass them." "You have already made them proud. Simply be yourself." The welcome ceremony took place in New Geneva, the capital of the unified Earth government. Thousands of people lined the streets, held back by security barriers. They cheered and waved flags. Some held signs welcoming the Zolthine. Others protested the presence of aliens on Earth. Council leader Vera Mills greeted the Empress at the steps of the assembly hall. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Empress Talia Vormesh, Earth welcomes you. We hope this visit marks the beginning of lasting friendship between our peoples." Council leader Mills: "I am here to learn if friendship is possible. Your species interests me." It was a diplomatic non-answer, but Mills smiled like she had expected nothing else. The formal reception began, filled with speeches and carefully worded statements. Jake stood behind the Empress's right shoulder, as Shivara had taught him. His eyes constantly scanned the crowd for threats. General Marcus Webb approached during a break in the proceedings. He was a broad man with a face carved by decades of military service. He looked at Jake with an expression that was hard to read. "Corporal Morrison, I have read the reports about Kalari Station. Quite the action." "I did what needed to be done, sir." "Some people are calling you a hero. Others wonder if you have been compromised." Webb's voice was neutral. "The Empress has considerable influence over you now." "The debt of honor is real, sir. I have learned that much about Zolthine culture." "And where does your loyalty lie, Corporal? With humanity or with her?" Jake met the general's eyes. "My loyalty is to doing what is right, sir. That has not changed." Webb studied him for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. "See that it does not, son." Over the following days, the Empress toured Earth with Jake as her constant companion. They visited museums where she studied human art for hours. They walked through historical sites where she asked endless questions about human wars and conflicts. She seemed particularly fascinated by memorials to fallen soldiers. "Your people build monuments to those who died," she observed at a war memorial. "You honor sacrifice." "Yes, Your Majesty. We believe those who gave their lives for others deserve to be remembered. Zolthine do not build such monuments. We honor victory and strength. The dead are simply gone." She touched the carved names on the stone. "Perhaps we are missing something." They talked late into the nights, the Empress asking questions about human nature that Jake struggled to answer. Why did humans form families? Why did they feel grief? Why did they create art and music? In turn, Jake learned about the Zolthine. Their empire spanned 1,000 worlds. They had eliminated disease, hunger, and natural death among their people. Every Zolthine could live for thousands of years if they chose. But their society was cold, built on individual achievement and power. Weakness was not tolerated. Compassion was seen as inefficiency. "Does that not make you lonely?" Jake asked one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The Empress was quiet for a long time. "Yes," she finally said. "It does." Agent Kyle Park arrived on the 5th day of the visit. He was a thin man with tired eyes, carrying datapads filled with intelligence reports. He met with the Empress, Jake, and General Webb in a secure room. "We have traced the Krell Syndicate's payment. It came from inside the Zolthine Empire." He pulled up images on the display, specifically from accounts controlled by Lady Kelthora. High Commander Vekral, who had been standing silently in the corner, stepped forward. "That is a serious accusation, human. Lady Kelthora commands 3 star systems. She is one of the most powerful nobles in the Empire. Which is exactly why she can afford to hire the Krell, Park replied. Our analysis shows she represents a faction that opposes any alliance with humanity. They see the Empress's interest in humans as weakness. The Empress's expression did not change, but Jake had learned to read the subtle shifts in her silver eyes. She was angry. How certain are you of this information? 90%, Your Majesty. Yet we are still gathering final confirmation. A alert sounded throughout the building. Red lights flashed. Jake's combat instincts kicked in immediately. He moved closer to the Empress, his hand going to the sidearm he now carried. Lieutenant Cross burst through the door. We have multiple security breaches. Unknown hostiles in the building. The state dinner. Jake remembered. Tonight was supposed to be a grand celebration with hundreds of guests from both species. The perfect target. Explosions rocked the building. The floor shook. Shivara stumbled and Jake caught her arm. High Commander Vekral's personal guards formed a protective circle around the Empress. Some of my guards are firing on the others, Vekral said, his voice tight with shock. There are traitors among us. 3 Zalthine guards entered the room with weapons raised. But they were not aiming at the doors. They were aiming at the Empress. Jake moved without thinking. He shoved the Empress aside as plasma bolts screamed through the air. One caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Pain exploded through his body, but he raised his pistol and fired. The first traitor guard fell. Lieutenant Cross and the loyal guards opened fire. The room became a chaos of energy weapons and shouting. Jake stayed between the Empress and the attackers, taking another hit to his side. His vision started to blur. The battle ended quickly. The traitor guards were dead. But Jake was on his knees, blood spreading across his uniform. The Empress knelt beside him, her hands touching his wounds. Her silver eyes were wide with something Jake had never seen in them before. Fear. You did it again, she whispered. My job, Jake managed to say through the pain. Dr. Lisa Monroe rushed in with a medical team. She took one look at Jake and her face went pale. These wounds are too severe. We cannot save him, not with our technology. The Empress stood. Her voice carried absolute authority. Bring him to my ship, immediately. Your Majesty, High Commander Vekral began. He has given his life for mine twice. I will not permit him to die. The Empress looked at her commander with eyes like frozen stars. Prepare the physicians. We will use our technology to save him. That is forbidden. Such enhancements are not for other species. I am the Empress. I decide what is forbidden. Jake felt himself being lifted. The world faded in and out. He heard voices arguing, felt movement, saw lights passing overhead. Then darkness took him once more. His last conscious thought was wondering if he would wake up this time, and if he did, what he would become. Jake opened his eyes to the flowing ceiling of the Zalthine medical bay again. But something was different. Everything looked sharper, clearer. He could see individual particles of light dancing in the air. His hearing picked up conversations happening far down the corridor outside. His body felt strong, coiled with energy he had never possessed before. Dr. Monroe sat beside his bed, reviewing data on a tablet. She looked up when he stirred, and her expression was complicated. Relief mixed with concern. Welcome back, Jake. How do you feel? Different. He sat up easily, no pain at all. What did they do to me? They saved your life using Zalthine biotechnology. Nanomachines are repairing your damaged tissue. Enhanced cell structures are making you stronger and faster. Your reflexes are now 3 times what they were. She paused. You are still human, Jake. But you are also something more now. How long this time? 2 days. The procedure worked faster than anyone expected. Monroe leaned forward. There is going to be a political nightmare over this. Some people are saying you have been turned into a Zalthine weapon. Others claim you are no longer fully human. Before Jake could respond, the door opened. Agent Kyle Park entered with a woman who looked remarkably like him. She wore the uniform of Earth Special Operations and carried herself like someone who had seen real combat. Corporal Morrison, I am Commander Nina Park, Kyle's sister. We need to talk about what happens next. Kyle activated a holographic display. It showed star charts and fleet positions. We have confirmed Lady Kelthera is behind the assassination attempts. She commands significant military forces and has rallied other noble houses to her cause. Intelligence estimates she has support from one-third of the Zolthene Empire. She plans to stage a coup when the Empress returns to Zolthene Prime, Nina added. She will claim the Empress has been corrupted by human influence and is unfit to rule. The Empress entered the room with Shivara and High Commander Vekral. Her silver eyes immediately found Jake, and something like relief crossed her face. You are recovered. Good. We have much to discuss. Jake stood, testing his new body. Everything responded perfectly, better than perfect. He could feel the strength in his muscles, the enhanced awareness of his surroundings. It was unsettling and amazing at the same time. The conspiracy against you is bigger than we thought, Your Majesty. I am aware. The Empress moved to the holographic display. I must return to Zolthene Prime and confront Lady Kelthara directly. If I do not, the Empire will tear itself apart. That is exactly what she wants, Vekral said. She will be waiting with her fleet. This could be a trap. It is definitely a trap, the Empress agreed. But I have no choice. A ruler who hides from challengers is no ruler at all. Jake stepped forward. Then I am coming with you. You have barely recovered from surgery, Corporal, Nina said. You need time to adapt to the enhancements. The debt of honor still stands, Jake replied. My place is beside the Empress. General Webb's voice came through the communication system. Morrison is right. If the Empress faces this threat, humanity should stand with her. It sends a message about the alliance we're trying to build. The General's image appeared on the display. I am assigning Commander Park and a special operations team to accompany the Empress. Captain Derek Stone will pilot the human ship Ranger as part of a joint task force. Consider it a field test of human and Zolthene forces working together. Over the next day, preparations moved quickly. Captain Stone and the Ranger joined the Zolthene fleet. The ship was small compared to the massive Zolthene vessels, but it carried the newest human weapons and shields. Stone himself was a veteran pilot with a reputation for creative tactics. Shivara spent hours teaching Jake the finer points of Zolthene politics. The noble houses operated on complex systems of honor, obligation, and ancient grudges. Lady Kelthera represented the old guard who believed the Zolthene should remain isolated and superior to all other species. Why is the Empress so different from the others? Jake asked during one of these sessions. Shivara was quiet for a moment. 300 years ago, the Empress had a companion. Not a sworn protector, but someone close to her. This person was weak by Zolthene standards, sickly and frail. When illness came, the other nobles said to let nature take its course. The strong survive, the weak perish. That is our way. What happened? The companion died. The Empress could have saved them with resources she possessed, but Zolthene culture said it would be weakness to do so. She followed tradition and has regretted it ever since. Shivara looked at Jake directly. When she saw you run forward while everyone else ran away, she saw something she thought was lost. The willingness to choose compassion over strength. The journey to Zolthene Prime took 5 days through hyperspace. Jake spent the time training with Commander Park's team, learning to use his enhanced abilities. He was faster and stronger, but he was not invincible. Park made sure he understood that by beating him in hand-to-hand combat repeatedly. Enhancements only help if you use them smart, she said after putting him on the floor again. Stop relying on your new strength. Think like you used to. Jake also spent time with the Empress. They talked about what would happen when they reached Zolthene Prime. She explained that Zolthene honor law meant Lady Kelthera could challenge anyone to single combat. If the Empress accepted and lost, her rule would end. Could she challenge me? Jake asked. Yes, you stand in a unique position as my sworn protector. If she defeats you, it would humiliate me and strengthen her claim that I have grown weak. Then I will not lose. The Empress studied him with those silver eyes. You have changed, Jake Morrison. Not just physically. You carry yourself differently now. I have learned from you, Your Majesty. about duty and sacrifice, meaning different things to different people, but still mattering. And I have learned from you about strength taking forms I never considered. When they finally emerged from hyperspace near Zolthine Prime, the sight took Jake's breath away. The planet was enormous, 3 times the size of Earth, covered in silver cities that gleamed like jewels. Orbital stations surrounded it in perfect geometric patterns. But the beauty was marred by the fleet waiting for them. Hundreds of warships bearing Lady Kelthara's colors hung in space, blocking their approach. Captain Stone's voice came through the communication system. "That is a lot of ships, Empress. Are you sure about this?" "I am certain, Captain Stone. Signal them that we are coming through." High Commander Vekral stood at the bridge's tactical station, analyzing the enemy formation. "They outnumber us 3-1. If this becomes a battle, we cannot win." "Then we must ensure it does not become a battle," the Empress replied. Jake stood beside her, his hand resting on his sidearm. His enhanced senses picked up the tension on the bridge, and everyone knew they were flying into danger with no guarantee of survival. The enemy fleet parted, creating a corridor toward the planet. It was clearly an invitation, but also a show of force. They could proceed, but only because Lady Kelthara allowed it. "They want us to feel trapped," Nina said quietly to Jake. Classic psychological warfare. As they descended toward Zolthine Prime, alerts began sounding. Enemy ships were moving to surround them. The tactical display showed Zolthine forces engaging each other in orbit. The coup had begun. Captain Stone and the Ranger broke formation, engaging enemy vessels with precisely targeted fire. The small human ship darted between the massive Zolthine warships, using speed and agility to avoid their weapons. "The human fights well," Vekral observed, with what might have been approval, and the Empress's flagship shuddered as it took fire. Shields held, but barely. They were being herded toward the Imperial Palace, exactly where Lady Kelthara wanted them. "She will try to kill you the moment we land," Jake said. "I know. That is why you are here." The ship landed in the palace courtyard. The doors opened to reveal ranks of warriors in Lady Kelthara's colors. And at their center stood the lady herself. She was tall even for a Zolthine, her armor ornate and ancient. Her eyes burned with righteous conviction. When she spoke, her voice carried across the courtyard. "Talia Vormesh, you have betrayed everything our empire stands for. You consort with inferior species. You show weakness. I challenge your right to rule." The Empress descended the ramp with Jake at her side. "Your challenge is noted, Kelthara, but first, we will settle this properly." Lady Kelthara's eyes fixed on Jake. "The human pet. Enhanced with our technology. This proves your corruption, Empress." She drew a blade that hummed with energy. "I challenge the human to single combat. When I kill him, all will see that your new ways lead only to death." Jake stepped forward, drawing his own weapon. "I accept." The courtyard fell silent as Jake and Lady Kelthara faced each other. Thousands of Zolthine watched from balconies and windows surrounding the open space. This was more than a fight. This was a test of two philosophies, two ways of seeing the universe. Lady Kelthara moved first. She was fast, faster than anything Jake had fought before. Her blade swept toward his neck in a strike that would have decapitated him. But Jake's enhanced reflexes kicked in. He ducked under the blow and rolled away, his own knife coming up in a defensive position. "You are quick for a human," Kelthara said, "but speed alone will not save you." She attacked again, a series of strikes so rapid they blurred together. Jake blocked and dodged, using every bit of his training and his new abilities. But he was being driven back. Kelthara had centuries of combat experience. She knew techniques that had been forgotten before Earth even developed space travel. A strike got through Jake's defense, cutting across his arm. Blood flowed, but the wound began closing almost immediately thanks to the Zolthine technology in his body. Kelthara saw this and sneered. "You are more Zolthine than human now. Does that not shame you? You are a puppet wearing human skin." Jake did not answer. He was learning her patterns, watching how she moved. Kelthara was skilled, but she fought with arrogance. She believed herself superior in every way. Commander Park watched from beside the Empress, her hand on her weapon. "He is outmatched," she whispered. "Perhaps in skill," the Empress replied quietly, "but not in purpose." Kelthera pressed her advantage, forcing Jake back toward a pillar. "Your Empress has made the Empire weak. She speaks of cooperation and understanding. These are the words of the defeated, not the rulers. We are Zalthine. We stand above all other species." Jake blocked another strike, the impact jarring his arms. "You are wrong." "About what, human?" "About strength." Jake changed his stance, no longer fighting defensively. "The Empress showed me that strength is not just power. It is wisdom. It is knowing when to extend your hand instead of your fist." Kelthera laughed, a harsh sound. "Philosophy will not save you." She lunged forward with a strike meant to end the fight, but Jake did not try to block it. Instead, he moved inside her reach, accepting a shallow cut to his side to get close. His knife found the gap in her armor at the shoulder joint. Kelthera stumbled back, surprised. Silver blood dripped from her wound. Her eyes widened in shock that this human had actually hurt her. "You fight without honor," she hissed, "trading wounds like a savage." "I fight to protect someone who matters to me," Jake replied. "That is all the honor I need." The battle continued, both fighters bleeding now. Jake's enhancements kept him going, but Kelthera's experience kept finding openings in his defense, where they were destroying each other piece by piece. High Commander Vekral watched with an unreadable expression. Shivara stood with her hands clasped, hoping the human would survive. Captain Stone and his team waited at the Ranger, ready to provide fire support if the fight turned into a massacre. Kelthera's next attack was a feint. Jake saw through it, but too late. Her blade swept low and cut deep into his leg. He went down on one knee, struggling to stay upright. "This is where you die, human. This is where the Empress's foolish dream dies with you." She raised her blade for the killing strike. Jake looked up at her, then past her, to where the Empress stood watching. Those silver eyes met his, and he saw something in them he had never seen before. Hope. Jake thought about everything that had happened, on running forward when everyone else ran away, choosing to protect someone not because of orders or duty, but because it was right. Learning that strength could mean different things, building bridges between species that had never understood each other. As Kelthera's blade descended, Jake moved. Not away from the strike, but toward it. He dropped his knife and caught her wrist with both hands, using her own momentum against her. The blade passed harmlessly over his shoulder as he twisted, throwing Kelthera off balance. They hit the ground together. Jake's injured leg screamed in protest, but he ignored it. He pinned Kelthera's sword arm and pressed his forearm against her throat. Not enough to kill, but enough to make his point. "I could end this now," Jake said quietly, only loud enough for her to hear. Zalthine honor says I have the right. You challenged me, and I defeated you." Kelthera glared at him with pure hatred. "But I am human," Jake continued. "We do things differently. We believe even our enemies deserve a chance to choose a better path." He released her and stood up, wincing as his leg protested. He picked up his knife but did not threaten her with it. Instead, he turned his back on her and limped toward the Empress. The courtyard held its breath. Kelthera could strike him down from behind. It would be dishonorable, but hatred could make people do dishonorable things. Kelthera remained on the ground, staring at Jake's retreating back. Slowly, understanding dawned in her eyes. The human could have killed her but chose mercy instead. This was strength she did not understand, could not understand, or it challenged everything she believed. The Empress stepped forward, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "The challenge is decided. Jake Morrison has proven his worth and mine. Any who doubt this may leave now. Those who stay will be part of something new." She turned to address all the watching Zalthine. "For centuries, we have believed that strength means dominance, that power means standing alone above all others. But I have learned from these humans that there is strength in unity, power in cooperation, growth in understanding." High Commander Vekral stepped forward. The massive warrior walked to the center of the courtyard and knelt before the Empress. "I was wrong about the humans, my Empress. I was wrong about this one especially." He looked at Jake with respect. He has shown us a different kind of courage. I pledge my loyalty to your vision. One by one, other Zalthine nobles came forward and knelt. Not all of them. Some left, unwilling to accept change. But more stayed than left. Lady Kelthera finally stood. She looked at Jake, then at the Empress. For a long moment, no one knew what she would do. Then she knelt. I accept defeat, she said, her voice strained but clear. Perhaps the old ways need to evolve. The peace treaty was signed that evening in the Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace. Humans and Zalthine stood together as equals for the first time. Ambassador Walsh shook hands with High Commander Vekral. Captain Stone shared tactical data with Zalthine fleet commanders. Commander Park and Shivara discussed joint training exercises. The Empress formally released Jake from his debt of honor in a ceremony witnessed by both species. You've saved my life 3 times and proven your loyalty beyond question. The debt is fulfilled. But then she offered him something new. A position as Friend of the Empire, a title created specifically for him. An ambassador and liaison between their peoples. Jake accepted. He knew he could never go back to being just a simple Marine. He had become something more, a bridge between worlds. Later, Jake stood on a balcony overlooking the Zalthine capital. Lieutenant Cross, Dr. Monroe, and Shivara joined him. They looked out at the alien city in comfortable silence. The Empress appeared beside them, moving with her usual grace. Historians will study this moment for centuries, Jake Morrison. The day everything changed because one human chose to run forward instead of away. Jake thought about everything that had led to this moment. The attack on Kalari Station, the surgeries and recoveries, the journey to Zalthine Prime, the battle with Lady Kelthara. I was not thinking about history or philosophy, Your Majesty. I just saw someone who needed help. The Empress smiled, a rare expression that transformed her face. That is precisely why it mattered. Jake looked up at the stars, finding the familiar light of Earth's sun among the thousands visible in the night sky. He was far from home, changed in ways he was still understanding. But he had found a purpose bigger than himself. What happens now? Lieutenant Cross asked. Now we build something new, the Empress replied. Together? Shivara raised a glass in a human gesture she had learned. To new beginnings. They drank to that, human and Zalthine standing side by side under alien stars. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it was a future they would face together. Jake Morrison, the Marine who had run forward when everyone else ran away, had changed the course of civilizations. Not through strength of arms or superior technology, but through simple courage and compassion. And in doing so, he proved that humanity had something to teach even the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. The story of the human who stood between the Empress and death would be told for generations. It would inspire others to choose courage over fear, unity over division, compassion over cruelty. Because sometimes one person running forward is all it takes to change everything.